Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm Park Howell and I'm so glad you're with us today. I have a new quick online course for you called the ABTs of Branding. In under 30 minutes, you'll craft your compelling brand narrative using the and, but, therefore foundational narrative framework, where all persuasive business communication starts. The course is only $35 and the outcome will be invaluable as you clarify your story to amplify your impact and ultimately simplify your life. Check out the ABTs of Branding right now at businessofstory.thinkific.com. On today's show, crowdsourcing and funding storytelling. How Legion M has created the world's first fan-owned Hollywood production company, and how you can become a big-time or small-time movie mogul.
We first started Legion M, I think there was maybe some skepticism like, oh, that'll never work, or, it just seems like a big hassle. No one will ever agree. And we want to grow to 1 million people in our shareholder base, on our cap table. And to a traditional VC, that sounds like a total nightmare. I mean, they can't even fathom it. To us, it sounds like nirvana.
That was Paul Scanlan, who, with Jeff Annison, founded Legion M. According to them, Legion M is revolutionizing the way entertainment is being made in Hollywood by uniting a growing fan community of 130,000 members with nearly 30,000 investors who have both equity and emotional stakes in the outcomes of the pictures they make. Projects in various stages of development, as Hollywood likes to say, include the epic fantasy The Emperor's Blades, comic book and feature film Girl with No Name, and documentary Memory: The Origins of Alien. Their work also includes multiple original television series, including Evermore, Airship Cowboys, and Malice, as well as interactive and VR-based projects like Icons, Face to Face, starring the late Stan Lee of Marvel comic fame and Kevin Smith. Legion M also invests in partner productions including Kevin Smith's feature film Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, as well as the critically acclaimed Colossal, starring Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis.
You don't remember anything last night, huh?
I got really melodramatic, didn't I?
Told me that you weren't really on a vacation. That you've been looking for a job for a year and your boyfriend didn't work out.
You are out of control.
What?
I've packed your things. They're in the bedroom.
What?
And since you didn't have any money, you decided to move back here.
Is there anything else?
Colossal was an official selection at Sundance, South by Southwest, and Toronto film festivals. I just caught it on Amazon. It's absolutely hysterical. Check it out. The Duel formed the company in 2016 with the purpose of allowing fans just like you to invest in and be part of the creation of entertainment from movies, television shows, virtual reality, and now even Broadway plays. For just $100, people are able to buy shares of the company, giving them the opportunity to add notes to the story, details for characters, provide props used in the projects, and so on. It all results in a built-in fan base for original IP guaranteed to bring in an audience upon release. So is crowdsourcing and crowdfunding movie making really a disruptive force in Hollywood, or just another startup whose ending could be either a comedy, tragedy, or even epic in its disruption? Now you get to play executive producer and give a thumbs up or thumbs down on Paul and Jeff's pitch on today's edition of The Business of Story. Paul and Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's been a long time in coming. I know Chris reached out to me a couple months ago. We were in the throes of the holidays and we were jam-packed with guests. So we had to put this off. But after prepping for the show, I am so excited to learn more about Legion M and what you all are doing in Hollywood, movie making, entertainment, VR production. And I'll tell you one of my main reasons why. And that is our middle child, our son Parker Howell, went to film school at Chapman University, a very prominent film school over there in 2006 to 2010. My listeners know this whole story. It's where I really got into storytelling and branding and marketing, because I said to Parker, hey, man, since when you're done with your books and your lectures, and since I'm paying for them, would you mind sending them to me so I can learn what Hollywood knows about storytelling and I can use it in the brand, sales, and marketing world? Which he did. It totally changed my whole trajectory. I closed down an ad agency I ran for 20 years, and now all I do is consult, teach, coach, and speak on the power of story in business. Having said all of that, and all my listeners know that, is I'm really fascinated with how you guys have come in and built this Legion M fan-based production company, kind of maybe wrestling the power away from those iconic brands that we know that have driven Hollywood for a century, and how you are putting the power back in the hands of the people and having some apparent success at doing that. So, long-winded hello. Welcome. Can you give us a little bit of background about both of yourselves and how this concept came to be?
Sure. Well, yeah, I'll go ahead and start, and then Jeff can kick in. This is Paul. I'm co-founder and CEO of Legion M, and I have to say I felt the same way when I was reading up about your podcast. Jeff and I are huge believers in the power of storytelling. I teach a class for Northwestern Kellogg, and I talk about how important storytelling is to entrepreneurs and to companies and cultures and everything. And for us, I think Legion M is the culmination of many years. Jeff and I have been co-founders on 3 different businesses. We started, our first company was a really pioneering streaming company back in the early 2000s. We grew that to 100 million in annual revenue and offices.
Was that Moby TV?
Yeah, that was
that Moby
TV.
TV?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. What was its business model?
That was a monthly recurring subscription revenue. I mean, it was like an early version of Netflix. I mean, it was an amazing business. We learned a lot through that process. And Jeff and I have always been believers in, the power of a community and when a community comes together. And so our next 2 businesses, I'll let Jeff talk about the middle one because he was really the lead on that one. But in the case of Legion M, we're really uniting. I mean, we believe that unity is such an important element for society as a whole, but it can also be applied towards business. And that, most people think of themselves individually as being powerless. Maybe they have a small vote in something. But when we organize, we have so much power. And, we can see that in elections and how government works, but it's true in business as well. If you look back at the, Occupy Wall Street, and some of the frustration that the masses have against, how the economy works and how it's rigged and fixed against them. And it's only because we don't organize. And when we organize, we have tremendous power. And there's probably no better industry than the entertainment industry to try that and to apply it. And this is an industry that is driven by a built-in audience. And it's why we have so many repeats and franchises and sequels and reboots. And what we get from Hollywood is because those are proven entities. And so what we're creating is a built-in audience for the company and every project that we do. But it's more than that. It's more than just having that community there to support us when we release a project. It's also there to help us choose and to guide us in selecting which projects are they most interested in. And, our long-term goal is to unite 1 million entertainment fans and then take over Hollywood. We're on our way. This is what we're doing.
Awesome. And I would imagine with your members and your investors that way, they are already invested in the success of a movie or a TV show or a VR project and are just waiting for you all to release it so they can watch it, say, I've been a part of that, and then share it with their world.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, fundamentally, what Legion M is about is trying to figure out how we can harness the power of a community, opening the gates of Hollywood, allowing people to come inside so that they become emotionally invested in these films and projects. They also have a financial investment, so they stand to gain from it. But at the end of the day, I think what really drives people is that emotional investment. And then counting on them to come out opening night because of the fact that it's literally their movie. They've been involved from day one. That's one of the first order things. And when we started the company, the whole company was precipitated because there was a change in securities laws that enabled this for the first time. Prior to what's called the Jobs Act, which is the securities laws that changed, it wasn't possible for people to invest and own a stake in a movie like this. Like, you could back something on Kickstarter, which is effectively a donation in exchange for a credit or a coffee mug or whatever. But the idea of actually having a financial stake in that is new and was never possible before.
The first time I experienced this same kind of concept you've got going at Legion M was about a decade ago. And Donald Miller, who is a very somewhat famous writer in some subgroups, he wrote a book called Blue Like Jazz that was very popular. And Hollywood came calling and said, hey, let's make a movie out of this. And so he worked with them, wrote the screenplay. They got in to shooting it, and they ran out of money. Big surprise. I mean, right? It happens all the time in your world. And he said, I can't remember how much it was. They were $25,000 or maybe $250,000 short of what they needed to finish the movie. It's been shot, but they got to finish this off. So he sent it out to crowdfunding and essentially said, for $250, you get to become an executive co-producer of Blue Like Jazz. And I thought that was such a cool idea. He went out to his readers, his raving fans. So I wrote my check, sent it in, and my wife, Michelle, and I got our little name as executive producer along with 300 people at the end of the movie. It was quite a good movie. And I got to tell you, that little ego boost or that coolness factor of look, our name's on there too. We kind of helped make this happen. I can see how that model can really work, especially if you amp it up like you have done at Legion M. So my first question coming out of that, are you looking for $100, $250, $250,000 from your investors or members, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, our goal is to keep the minimum investment as low as possible. So right now that's at $100. $100 is the minimum investment, but we also allow people to join the Legion for free just to be a part of it. We don't want anything stopping people from supporting our projects and giving us their voice and, adding their value to the company. And we have actually a lot of people that have joined for free. The minimum investment's $100, but the average turns out to be about $400.
What do you get for that investment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what they're getting is they are literally buying stock. So it's a little different from how Kickstarter and Indiegogo and some of the early incarnations of crowdfunding. This is what we call equity crowdfunding. So they are like our venture capital. They're the ones that own the shares in the company. We haven't raised any institutional funding or anything. 100% of the funding that we've done with Legion M has come from individuals that are excited about what we're doing and knowledge, these are their shares, they're there, they have them, they're held in their name. And, ultimately when we take the company public or, we take it to the next level, our goal for them is to give them a really nice financial ROI. Jeff and I want to redefine what it means to be a shareholder. Of course, we want to give a financial ROI. That's the kind of typical meaning for ROI for a shareholder. But we also want to deliver on emotional ROI. And what really makes Legion M so exceptional is that those two things are not at odds with one another. They're actually complementary and combine for a greater effect. The more emotional ROI our community is getting from Legion M, the more valuable Legion M is as a company, because the more engaged our community and our shareholders are when we're releasing projects. The bigger and more successful, the lounge that we host at Sundance, the more people we have coming to that, the more successful it is. We have sponsors that help us pay for it. We bring in, food, and we have alcohol sponsors. And, it's one thing to go to Sundance, and pretty much everyone in our community probably had Sundance on their bucket list at some point in time. And it's one thing to go. Sundance is kind of a hard thing to navigate if you're just going by yourself and you don't know anyone. But it's a completely different experience to go as a co-owner of a company that's hosting one of the most prominent lounges on Main Street, is either looking to buy the rights to a movie or partner with a distributor to buy the rights to a movie and playing this game, Film Scout, or is premiering a movie there, which we've done, and hosting premiere parties and having celebrities come through the lounge and they're a co-owner and they can walk down the street and wear their Film Scout badge. It's just a totally different experience, and they're all meeting each other and going to movies together. It's this incredible thing, and we apply that to Comic Cons and film festivals and many different elements like that.
So interesting. And Jeff, I'll ask you this. As Paul said, it's kind of double jeopardy. I mean, investing is always risky, but gosh, Hollywood, entertainment world, you never know what's really going to make a hit. So you were really pushing the return on ROI, which I totally get, or on that emotional ROI, because we felt that, like we had a little hand in helping this movie come to be. But Jeff, are you getting investors that really know the Hollywood realm that say, this is something? I mean, this is really a way that's going to maybe knock Hollywood on its ear, and I want to have a part of that.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've got investors that are all over the spectrum. Because our investment is only $100, there's a lot of people that frankly treat it like a Kickstarter, and they just are supportive and they want to be a part of it. And we've had so many people say things like, I don't care if I ever get a return on the investment. Like, I feel like I've got my money's worth for all the things that I've been a part of. So there are people that look at it that way. But the wonderful thing is that there is a real swing for the fences financial return that is potential. I mean, we tell people it's like investing in Walt Disney Studios back when it was just Walt and Roy. And so, the fact is, like, we're very upfront. We tell people most startup fails. The most likely outcome of investing in Legion M is that you will lose your investment. I mean, but that is also true for every single startup on the planet. It was true for Google when they started Google, and Facebook and Disney. But the companies that succeed, the startups that succeed can go on and change the world. And I think that, if you were an early investor in Disney, you would have an amazing financial return. And so I just love, frankly, the fact that even though there are plenty of people that are satisfied, that part of it is still out there waiting for them. And they're not counting that at all, but it's still there. And it feels so healthy that these people that are ultimately responsible for the success of the company will also benefit from that. So we also have investors that have put in hundreds of thousands of dollars. And those people are not doing it as a Kickstarter. These are people that invest professionally and, are paying attention. They're reading the financials. Our largest investor is somebody that invested in Paul's and my last company. And, this whole notion of risk versus reward is really, I feel very well qualified to talk about it because we've experienced both. Paul mentioned Moby TV, the first company. We grew that from 3 people working out of a spare room in a house into a 400 person company with offices around the globe that won an Emmy Award for innovation and raised hundreds of millions of dollars in venture capital and had I think close to $100 million in revenue. Like, that was a home run as far as where we took it. The second company that we launched was called the New York Rock Exchange, and it was a great idea. And we ended up generating a couple $1 million, a few $1 million in revenue over the course of the 6 years that it was in business. We took a swing for the fence and ultimately came up short. For a number of reasons. And that ended up wrapping up around 2016. And when that wrapped up, our largest investor in that venture wrote us a check to found our next venture without even, before we even had a bank account to put it in. Like, he was just ready. And, for us, like, that meant a lot because this is a guy who had just lost his entire investment, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the New York Rock Exchange. And he turned right around and jumped right in.
And the New York Rock Exchange was being able to invest in or buy in music, popular music? Was that kind of the concept there?
It's actually kind of funny. It actually started off, and the idea was, what if you could invest in a rock star? Like, that'd be really fun. Like you hear this person, you're like, oh my God, this person's going to be huge. Like, how can I invest? And so we literally started from that to figure out, can you do that? And at the time, this was 2012 that we started this, you could not, because the Jobs Act that I mentioned that enabled Legion M hadn't gone through yet. That didn't actually end up it being implemented until 2016. So we ended up going down the path of more of like a memorabilia play where you literally owned a piece of the copyright of the song. You didn't get any royalties from it or anything like that, but you could look somebody in the eye and say, I own this song along with the members of the band who were the other owners of it. And so it's kind of funny because for the first few years, we thought, oh man, we were just too early. We were too early. The Jobs Act went into place. And if we had done this a few years later, we could have actually invested in music and artists, and that would have been an amazing company. But just over the past year, we're like, no, we were actually even earlier than that. We invented, a non-blockchain based NFT. Like, that was literally what it was.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And so it's kind of ironic that, again, had we launched that today, I think there's a chance that the New York Rock Exchange could be the Dapper Labs of the music industry, because it's just such a cool idea that is finally possible and having its day.
Well, maybe we need to bring it back.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So you've got all these investors and you've got members that are putting in anywhere from $100 to $100,000. And you were saying, Paul, that you share log lines with them and ideas about movies coming up and entertainment products. How do you sort through that? It sounds to me it would be a little bit like, designing a camel by committee, that you get all this input. How do you ferret through that input and find something that is meaningful enough that it's worth expending and investing your time and energy into it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, first of all, one of the strongest things that Legion M believes in is that you don't make great art by committee. And so, our community, we do not go to our community for notes to a director. Once we've chosen to get involved in a project, then we stand behind that director and we're there to support them in their vision for, it's a director or creator or whoever it is. When we look at how we make our decisions at Legion M, the community is involved in guiding us at kind of a higher level. What genres are they interested in? What talent do they like in Hollywood? What projects are they watching? Every exercise that we go through, whether it's Impulse or Film Scout, is feeding information to us that we're gleaning to understand what is our community most interested in. And it's one of the things that's been so enlightening about the whole process of Legion M is that what we've learned is that they're actually a lot more open-minded to projects, even outside of what we thought. We thought we'd have not a narrow band of projects that we'd be limited to, but a somewhat defined scope. And what we're learning over time, and as we ask them more questions, that they're actually very open-minded to, as long as we're focused on high quality, original, creative projects, they're all in. But we have another element of our business that we use as a sounding board as well, where, when we were getting involved in a project, it's not feasible for us to share all the information with our community all the time. So it's not like it's just an election process where we put 5 projects up and then they choose and then we just go do it. It's a little different. We look at creatively and directionally, what are the types of things we're open to and interested in. But then we have our advisors. We've had an amazing luck in recruiting people to join our advisory board. And these are Hollywood executives, people like Leonard Maltin, one of the best, film critics of all time, Dean Devlin, billion-dollar producer and director and writer. We just added William Shatner to our board of advisors. We have Lynn Barch, who came from Lucasfilm, Lisa Tabak at Netflix, Scott Landsman, head of comedy for Sony. So we have this incredible resource that we can go to and say, hey, this is a project we're looking at. I mean, we're doing it earlier today. We're creating a sizzle video for a project. We're about to take it out to sales. We can go to someone who's a complete insider that knows exactly how everything works, and we can say, hey, what do you think of this sizzle? We're not asking you in your official role at Studio X or wherever you are. We're asking you as an advisor, what do you recommend? We get their feedback. And then, often there are opportunities where they'll say, oh, and by the way, we do want to look at it, and I want to shepherd it through our process. But so it's great to have an open door there. But, we're really kind of marrying the feedback that we get from both sides. We've got the community because, we're absolutely, the way we look at it, we're only as good as how happy they are. If they're unhappy with what we're doing, then, this doesn't work. And thankfully, they've been happy with what, and, we tell our community, we don't expect 100% of the community to like every single project, but, we want to have a diverse slate so that we can at least have a handful of projects that appeal to everyone. But what they are interested in may vary among them. But one of the coolest things about having them as investors is what we've learned is that we're even stretching their own personal taste, because we invested in a movie like Mandy. We have investors that have told us, Mandy's not normally a movie I would be interested in, but because we invested, I did watch it and I appreciated it, or I recommended it to my friends that I knew would like it. And they don't question why we invested in it if they didn't like it. I think most investors know that we can't invest in a project that every single person likes every single time. So,
Yeah. So what are some of the products, movies, TV shows that our listeners may have seen out there that have come through Legion M?
Well, the very first movie that we were involved with was a movie called Colossal that starred Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis. That came out in 2016. We didn't produce that film, but we helped release it with Neon, the distributor. That also, they also released Parasite and I, Tonya. They're an amazing distributor, but they bought the rights to that film at the Toronto Film Festival and then contacted us and said, hey, we want to partner with you. That was our very first project. Since then, Paul mentioned Mandy with Nicolas Cage. We were an investor and equity financier of that movie. So again, we weren't responsible for the movie. We helped finance it. Our money specifically helped bring on Johan Johansson, who did the score, which was an amazing score, one of his last scores before he passed away. But those are probably the two best known. Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, which is a Kevin Smith movie. We were played a big role in that one, again, as a financier and helping release it in partnership with Kevin and Saban Films, which was amazing. And we got a ton of stuff that's coming out. I mean, honestly, if you go to the Legion M website and check out our project slate, there's probably 20, 30 different projects out there. Some of those are in development. Some of them are just coming out. We just sold our very first show to a streamer, a series to a streamer. And we can't announce who it is or what the show is because it's still in the early stages there. And it'll probably be coming out in 2023. And so they don't want to announce it until we get a little bit closer. But that's a huge step forward for the company to take a project that we initially developed and produced and selling that to one of the major streamers. So that's super exciting. And then we got a film that we just wrapped production on that we produced. That is, it's called The Man in the White Van. And it stars Madison Wolfe and Sean Astin and Ali Larder, Breck Basinger. It's an amazing cast. It's an amazing film that tells the story, actually, kind of the origin story of the whole man in a white van trope. It's based on a true story. It's a true crime thriller that we're really excited about kind of getting the story out there. And for us, it's also, those two projects specifically, the Man in the White Van and the series that we just sold really represent an inflection point for Legion M. Because like I said, when we started off with Colossal and a lot of the movies that we were involved with, those movies would have happened whether or not Legion M was involved, right? So we participated, we accelerated, we might help them, like we said earlier, we might help them find an audience, that sort of thing. But, we've gotten to the point where we had to invest and make small investments in other people's projects, in the earlier days. And we've been able to kind of step up and make bigger investments and then, get more involved with the production and the release of them, to the point where now these are our projects. Neither of these projects would likely exist without Legion M's involvement in them. And it's just, it's kind of a steady progression for the company as we grow.
Are you starting to turn heads in Hollywood with the executive types?
Yeah, I think we're definitely on everyone's radar. I mean, we've had some outreach from, even early on, we had, prominent people like Guillermo del Toro interested in wanting to talk to us. And yeah, I mean, just the fact that like someone like William Shatner is, willing, we're not paying him, we gave him some equity to be a part of the company, but he was just interested in what we were doing and believes that, Stan Lee was a big advocate for us, right before he passed away. We worked on a project with him, and, what I would say.
And that's out of Marvel comic book fame, right? Stan Lee.
Yeah, Stan Lee, the creator. Yeah. And so, when Jeff and I look back at our kind of as entrepreneurs, we like to, a lot of startups or ambitious entrepreneurs, try to do something disruptive or unique. And, Moby TV was a disruptive force in the television industry. And, we defied those odds, and we had a lot of pushback on that company from the cable industry and from the traditional media not wanting to like jump in on streaming back then. And, that was hard. But one of the things, and, when we first started Legion M, I think there was maybe some skepticism like, oh, that'll never work, or, that just seems like a big hassle. No one will ever agree. And, we had a lot of our more traditional venture capital friends tell us, you want, I think we mentioned earlier, we want to grow to 1 million people in our shareholder base, on our cap table. And, to a traditional VC, that sounds like a total nightmare. I mean, they can't even fathom it. And to us, it sounds like nirvana. Like, I mean, that's really what we're looking for. And, whether it's a nightmare or nirvana, like, remains to be seen. What we can tell you is that 35,000 so far, it's been amazing. There's it's not easy. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but it's really worthwhile. And, we believe in, there's Jim Collins is famous for talking about the flywheel, and the flywheel is such an important element to Legion M. It's our community. Our community is our flywheel. And, the bigger that community gets, the more valuable we are to as a company, but also the more valuable we are to the industry. And this is one of the things where I think it really does depend on who we're talking to. And people like, William Shatner that understand fandom, people like Stan Lee, Dean Devlin, Leonard Maltin, they get it right away. And they know how valuable what we're doing is. And so I would say the industry as a whole, I think, has been pretty warmly receptive to Legion M, because they understand that actually the bigger Legion M gets, the more value they can actually, we can help. We can add value to an industry that, they may feel cornered, that like they're kind of stuck in this reboot and retreading existing franchises. But, here comes Legion M. If we're successful, then we can create new franchises. And instead, we'll probably still do sequels and reboots, because once we have something, we're going to want to keep going. But we're not limited to that. And, it's one of the things that we want Legion M to be known for, and what we want our community to, we believe in storytelling. We believe in purpose. What is, like, for most companies, I think oftentimes acknowledging, or the people that work at the company don't even know what the purpose is. I mean, if the purpose is just to make money, then that's a purpose, but it's not a very uplifting or enlightened purpose. And, Legion M, we have a purpose, and our purpose is to stimulate more creativity in an industry that we love. And as Jeff mentioned earlier, open the gates to Hollywood so more people can have access to it and we can hear from more diverse voices. We feel like everything that Legion M can do for this industry doesn't necessarily have to come at someone else's expense, can be additive to the industry as a whole and help everybody.
How do you decide on what's a good story to spend your investors' money on and your time and energy to do it? You're getting input from the community, which is great. You've got this board of advisors who I would imagine are still probably somewhat stuck in old Hollywood, but looking for new Hollywood. So you get a little bit of balance there. And then, of course, you have your own creative sensibilities. So how do you bring those together to find a story or a TV series that you believe in that's going to work?
It's a great question, and it really kind of cuts to the quick of what Legion M is, because like we said at the outset, the whole premise of this company is that because we're owned by fans, we can create competitive advantages that other companies don't exist. If it was just Paul and I, and we had $15 million and, we were rolling around in Hollywood, what makes Legion M different than that? And so I think that first and foremost, the community is at the center of everything that we do. And so Paul mentioned earlier, Impulse and Film Scout. There's a lot of tools that we've developed that are designed to artfully...
Tell us what those are.
Yeah.
The Impulse, and you've mentioned Film Scout a couple times. Tell us what those are.
All these tools are really designed to kind of artfully extract the wisdom of the crowd. I mean, you asked a great question earlier about like, how can you get people involved in making decisions? Don't you just have like chaos, which absolutely would be the case. And so, like Paul said, this isn't a democracy and it's not designed by committee. Two examples that I'll give. The first one is Film Scout. So Film Scout, Sundance just happened. I think there were 64 different films that we were looking at Sundance that Legion M was interested in potentially getting involved with. And, that doesn't mean like buying the film necessarily, but having some sort of stake or getting involved with it or partnering with the company that's releasing it. And so, if it was just Paul and Jeff's company, we would just argue over which films we like best, and then we'd make our decisions that way. And I think that's the way that a surprisingly high number of decisions are made in Hollywood. It just comes down to like, those sorts of discussions. But we feel like, okay, there's got to be a better way. And we've got this amazing community. So we created an app, which is a game that allows all of our community, people from around the world, to help us evaluate the film and the films at Sundance. And there's really two components to it. One is if you're away, somewhere, anywhere in the world, you can see all the films that are playing. You can see who's in them, what they're about, all the sort of information that you would have if you're scrolling through Netflix on a Friday night trying to decide what to watch. And people from around the world help us figure out then, okay, what is the community most interested in seeing? The second half of that is, especially this year, because Sundance was online, is we had hundreds of Legion M people watching Sundance films and rating and reviewing them. And so, like, again, if you think about the logistical challenges of just the Paul and Jeff company of going into Sundance, if there's 64 movies, you can't even watch that many movies in a limited number of, you're going to have to choose the top 5 or 6. So we use the community to narrow it down. And then we also expand because we've got the whole community. So we can have hundreds of boots on the grounds, watching films, submitting their reviews, and that all becomes data that we use then to process and help steer the boat. And so I think that that's probably one of the best examples of the way that we feel like we can tap into the community. But there's another one as well, and it speaks to the question you had earlier about developing story, and that's Girl with No Name. This was a film that we had the script for. This was years ago. It was a Slam Dance award-winning script, and they had taken it to Hollywood to try and shop it around, and it's a female-driven Western. And at the time that they tried to get it made, that was a difficult sell. It's a lot easier today, I think. People are much more open to it. What we did was we decided to release a comic book, and we did the comic book on Kickstarter. And the comic book served a couple different purposes. Number one, it was a way for us to generate some revenue on the project while it's in the development phase, which is normally a phase where you don't make any money, right? You
Essentially, you are making money on the storyboarding of this movie by turning it into a comic
That's
book.
exactly it, because the comic book is essentially the first draft of the storyboard. So it was a way to monetize it.
Mhm.
It was a way to
Smart.
start to build grassroots buzz for it. The Kickstarter ended up being wildly successful. And we had, at the time, it was the most backed comic book Kickstarter of all time. So when we went to a studio, we couldn't, it wasn't just like, hey, this is an award-winning script. It was also, and here's this amazing comic book where you can start to visualize it. And by the way, this is the most backed comic book project of all time. But the really other cool part of this is that, we set up the whole comic book. There were 3 different covers that had different art styles. And we had everybody vote based on, they got to choose which cover they wanted. And so effectively there, we were testing 3 different artistic styles. It's a very art-driven movie, and allowed us to figure out, okay, of the community, this is the one that resonates most. And so that was a powerful data point. Then we had an online development meeting where all the people that backed the project came online. The director and the producers of the movie were there, and they were talking, and we were soliciting, like, oh, who should play these characters? And what did you think of this? And, what stood out to you? And so what that ultimately ended up doing was the whole process of doing the first draft of the storyboards, getting the feedback from the community, both in terms of their dollars and what they bought, as well as their opinions and what they thought. That led the director to go back and do a rewrite of the script that made the script even that much better. And so again, trying to harness and ask 35,000 people what you think is really infeasible. But we think that if you're smart about it, there's ways that you can pull that data out, that makes it fun for the community. It makes fun for people to be involved, and also really powerful for the company. And we feel like we're just scratching the surface, but we think that that's the true power of Legion M.
Yeah, it's like entertainment movie through evolution. We've got an idea. We want to push it out there. We're going to actually sell some of the concepts early on to see what works, what doesn't, while monetizing the movie, clarifying then where the script needs to go, and away you go. So I'm clear. Is Impulse the app, or is Film Scout the app that is gamified getting audience input on a movie?
Film Scout is the app. Impulse is just it's a separate way for us to we can ask anything in Impulse. It's not related to specifically to, we can put log lines in Impulse. We're doing one about NFTs just to gauge interest in what is our community, what's their openness to NFTs.
It's your polling app internally,
Polling app,
basically,
yep,
of what's
basically,
working
yep.
and what doesn't work. This idea about Film Scout app and gamifying it so you can get real-time input. That seems brilliant. Are none of the other big studios doing something like that?
No, nobody does anything like it. Legion M is first and foremost a community. As we're growing, we're building out our platform for engaging. How do we collect and harness this information that's so valuable in the most efficient and feasible way? But then also, how do we disseminate information and get their engagement when we're releasing a project? I mean, we have other parts of our platform that allow our community to organize their own meetups with other investors to go watch our movies when they come out. And those are also when, theaters were alive and kicking, which we're coming back to now. We were very successful when our movies would release. We would use our movie meetup maker to kick out, and we would have hundreds of meetups in one weekend across the country. Some of them would be small, maybe a handful of people, depending on where they are, but other ones in the more urban settings would fill up a theater, sell out the whole theater just with our Legion M meetup. One of our quotes and one of our mantra or mottos, I guess, at Legion M is having fun can be good business. And the idea of going to a movie with other co-owners to watch the movie that you had a part in and helping create That's a really fun thing to do. And so we make them almost like mini premieres, some of them. And then, of course, we have our movie premieres. And when we do that, we're Legion M is always the one with the largest guest list. I think at our last movie, Arch Enemy, which we premiered at a drive-in movie theater, I think more than half the cars in the theater were Legion M investors. And that's just an amazing experience.
You have a built-in focus group. You have a built-in premier audience. You have built-in influencers who are invested both emotionally and financially to give you the most powerful form of advertising or marketing there is. That's word-of-mouth marketing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last question for you, then I got to run because I know you guys are busy too. If I invest, do I get to have like Brad Pitt walk in one of your movies with a business of story cap on with a little product placement there?
Well, you laugh, actually. I think Jeff and I should maybe both answer this question. What I
I'm
would
not
say,
laughing. I'm dead serious.
No, I know. Well, and we are too, actually, because one of the other examples that I think we love to talk about, and we can't promise every investor. And what you do get is you can upload your photo to be in our photo mosaic, which is we'll send you an example. Our animated credit is a animated photo mosaic of all of our investors' pictures, anyone that's uploaded a picture, plus their voices, because we asked them all to send in a recording of them saying, we are Legion M, or I am Legion M. And so we created our animated credit that goes in front of our projects is literally made up from our community. But one of my favorite examples, and we can't promise this to everyone, but anytime we get involved in a project, we always start off by letting the director know that we are here as a community. We are here to be supportive, and we want to support the project in any way that we can. We don't want to interfere, so we're there to support their vision. But if there are any production needs or anything that can be helpful, we want them to know about it, and we want to be able to try to support that first and foremost. So we do try to hire internally and do all the obvious things, but then we do less obvious things like, well, we always need cars in our movies. And, in our movie Arch Enemy, we needed the hero's car. And the director had kind of a vision for what that car would look like. And he said, if anyone has a car like this, I'd be happy to put it in the movie and, make it their car. And we put it out to our community. We had dozens of cars uploaded to our website so the director could look at them. And he ended up, and this is an example where the influence of the community and the value that they can bring actually furthered the creative of the project, because the director ended up choosing a car that was different than his creative brief, but way better in his mind, a way better reflection of the car that this character should be driving in the movie. It had a very noir paint job. I mean, it was something that until you saw the car, it would be hard to describe. But it was a 75 El Camino with this really cool noir paint job. And the guy who owns that car, got to come to set, be there with the car. I mean, it was his obligation. If he were going to put his car in the movie, he had to make sure it was there and running and doing all this. And also, he ended up in the movie. So they used him as an extra. He went to the wrap party. He was a mechanic. He's still a mechanic, but he completely changed his career. Now he's a movie mechanic and stunt coordinator and car wrangler and all of the above. His whole life has changed. I mean, he credits Legion M with it, but it's an amazing experience because, we feel like, oh, we're so grateful that he had this amazing car, and he's so grateful that he had this opportunity to have his car in a movie.
And that's the power of a brand driven by purpose. So It's more than just getting the entertainment on. It's actually having an impact in the lives of the people that you are servicing, both the community of your investors and members and then the general public as you bring it out. Where can people learn more about you guys and how they can get involved if they're interested?
Just go to legionm.com as our website. And, if we've got a fundraising round open, there'll be links there to that. We don't always have a fundraising round open. Sometimes it's in a wait list and sometimes we're just closed for a while. But you can also follow us on social media. It's just Legion M Official, and that's across everything: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even the new social medias that nobody knows yet because they haven't been invented.
But you're working on that, I'm
That's
sure,
right.
at Legion M. Yeah. Hey, well, thank you both for taking the time to be here. I know you've got packed schedules. It's so much fun to talk to folks in Hollywood, and especially doing it a different way. So I really appreciate you, Paul and Jeff, for being here today.
All right. Thank you, Park. Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.
Awesome. And thank you all for listening to this edition. If you like what you heard, share it with friends, family, colleagues, and anyone that you think might be interested in the Legion M concept to investing in and participating in and emotionally diving into Hollywood, TV shows, VR, and some of the other really cool entertainment things they're doing. If I can be of service to you, come on over to businessofstory.com. And until next week, when we will have another story artist right here for you, like Paul and Jeff, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for listening.